being here to join us in the celebration of Steve's life. My name is Tina, and I'll be your MC for the evening. I'm Tammy's sister and Steve's sister-in-law. During one of their conversations where Steve shared his wishes with Tammy, he told her he didn't want a funeral. He said he didn't want everyone to gather and be sad. He wanted his send-off to be happy. And Tam asked him if he wanted a celebration of life, and he said no. And Tam clarified, maybe a celebration of life can be happy. It can be like a party. And he said, yes, that's what I want you to do. So here we are today, celebrating Steve and the life he lived so well. To give you an idea of what we have planned, Tanya will read a tribute poem that she's written to share with you. I'll share some of the stories of Steve's life and the memories of him that warm our hearts and bring smiles to our faces. Tanya's put together a beautiful slideshow that we'll share with everyone. And Steve loved music, so we'll have some of our family share their musical talents. Then we'll have a meal together, and you'll notice that some of your tables have a crib board and a deck of cards. Crib is one of Steve's favorite pastimes. You may have also noticed that we have a tribute photo book here at the front, and we'd love for everyone to sign the book. And then we'll end our night together celebrating Steve's life with more music, hopefully some dancing, sharing more stories, and making new memories. So Tanya will get us started now with the tribute.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya. I'm Steve's sister-in-law, Tammy's sister, and I've written a poem in honor of Steve that I'd like to share with you. Depending on when you met him. Depending on when you met him, you might have known him as Steve, Tam Steve, Dad, or Uncle Steve. Depending on when you met him, Steve might have been a young boy getting into mischief with one of his 9 siblings. Maybe he and his sister Max caught the bathroom on fire, or when he and his brother Tony fixed a hole in the wall with milk and wallpaper. Or he might have been putting another one of the family vehicles into the Barsway, which is a part of the ocean. And yes, Steve did roll more than one vehicle into the ocean. Steve was a great brother and a bit of a daredevil. Depending on when you met him, Steve might have been falling in love with Tam and beginning to build a love story like no other. Or he might have been at the ripe old age of 18 and welcoming their beautiful daughter, Tiana, into the world. Steve was Tam's soulmate and a proud dad. Depending on when you met him, Steve might have been packing up his small family and heading to Alberta, where he whistled and worked his days away at Bouchard Well Service, a company he loved and worked hard to climb the ranks in, from a roughneck to a dairy can to a driller, finally a tool push. Or he might have been becoming a dad for the second time. His boy Tommy was born, and Steve's heart grew even bigger, if that's possible. Another child, a son, a boy, another pride and joy. Steve was a hard-working man and a grand provider. Depending on when you met him, Steve might have been vacationing with his whole family, and I mean the whole clan of us. He spent his days snorkeling with Claudia, playing crib with Joey and Jack, shedding a tear as Chloe sang, or just sitting with all the nieces and nephews and listening to everybody's adventures of the day. Or he might have been making yet another friend, whether he was in the oil field, airport, gas station. Steve had a way of walking amongst a group of strangers and leaving with a bunch of new fast friends. Steve was a remarkable uncle and a loyal friend to everyone. Depending on when you met him, Steve might have been building a rig with Trent. True rig talk that only those two understood in our family. With my Steve, it might have been sledding, boating, taking a road trip, or chauffeuring Tam and I somewhere. Or he might have been just loving life as we all got together while Kevin played a tune or two and we had a family sing along. Steve was no ordinary brother-in-law. He was like a brother to all of us. Depending on when you met him, Steve might have been after working all week, long days, and coming home to a little girl who was looking for a playmate. Steve would sit on the floor and let Diana practice her hairstyling skills, her makeup application talents, or he'd work for baby dolls. He watched more Lion King than he could count. Or he might have been helping Tommy do another school project, from coloring every project that Tommy was ever assigned to building a hoverboard and a limehouse. According to Steve, all of his and Tommy's projects were the best ever submitted. Steve was an incredible dad who helped mold two amazing adults. Depending on when you met him, Steve might have been driving down every back road in Alberta with the music on blast, or him and Tam were tearing up the dance floor. They were always the first ones out dancing, whether we were camping, in a garage, on a deck, or even out on the wharf. If there was music playing, Tam and Steve were dancing. Steve was an exceptional husband. Steve was Tam's strength, Tam's courage, Tam's love. Steve loved fiercely. Steve was loved dearly. And if love could have kept Steve alive, he'd still be here with us today. We love you, Steve. Tam, Steve, Dad, Uncle Steve.
Gives you a great picture of Steve. Most of you already know the beautiful words. Thank you so much, Tom. Just looking out and seeing all of the purple is amazing. That was his favorite. Most of us chose to wear purple tonight. So now I'll share some memories and stories of Steve that I put together. As many of you know, Steve was born into a large family in English Harbor, East Newfoundland, to Tom and Mary on May 16, 1971. Steve was the 9th of 10 children in Tom and Mary's family. And we actually are privileged to have some of Steve's sisters here with us this evening, some traveling all the way from Newfoundland and Nova Scotia to be here. That's wonderful. As you can imagine, growing up in such a large family, the older siblings were needed to help out with the care of the younger ones, and also to help out with chores around the house. So during one of our evenings together at the hospital, Steve's sister Sandra shared a story of one evening she was caring for the youngsters and was told to mop the floors after she put them all to bed. So Sandra told us of the time it took to get the younger ones, including Steve and the baby of the family, Maxine, settled away into their bedrooms. Once she thought they were settled for the night, she got the mop and the bucket ready and began cleaning the floors. She told us she just started when Steve came out of the room for the first time, asking for some water. She told him to hurry and get a drink, not to walk on the floor she just cleaned, and then get back to bed. She said he ran to the sink, got his drink, and then ran back to the room. Now, by all accounts, everyone that knew Steve when he was a young child has been telling us about him always running, and usually in his bare feet, even if he was outside. This was Steve as a child. So a short time later, he came back telling Sandra he was still thirsty and needed more water. So this happened a few times until Sandra became frustrated with him and told him that was it. It was his last drink, and he had to stay in the room for the night. She described how Steve ran to the sink, got his drink, and then ran toward the mop bucket and kicked it over before running back to the room. So having had enough, Sandra refilled the bucket, went to the room, got Steve. When she got back to the kitchen, she turned him upside down, held him by the feet, and dumped him head first into the mop. Needless to say, he stayed in the room afterwards, and Sandra was able to finish cleaning her floors. You don't have to spend a long time in the company of Steve's family to realize that they grew up in a busy home. And it sounds like the kids got into mischief on a regular basis, which made for many great stories, and I'm sure a lot of more memories for the family. As many of you also know, Steve and Tammy have been together basically since they were young teenagers. They started dating in junior high school, and they started their family young as well. They welcomed Tiana into the world when Steve was 18 and Tam was 17. For many couples, having a child when you're young is a struggle. For Steve and Tammy, Tiana was the next phase in their relationship, and they transitioned pretty smoothly from being teenagers to parents. Tiana's earliest memories of her dad probably involved her putting his hair in ponytails or putting barrettes in his hair and applying makeup. Steve had a lot of hair when he was younger, so if you don't know him when he was younger, you'll see on the slideshow he had a lot of hair. He actually wore a mullet for a period of time as well. I don't know if we have video of that or not. So Steve would play with Tiana for as long as she was interested. Dolls, dress up, tea party. He was game for anything. Now, while Tammy was pregnant with Tiana, she came to St. John's to live with me. We had a two-bedroom apartment that was walking distance to the university that I was attending and the high school that Tam was attending. And those that know us from Newfoundland, but others do not, we were raised in a strict Catholic family. So even though Tam and Steve had a baby, they were not able to live together. And in fact, it was expected that Steve would not spend the night with Tam until they were married. Now, this was 35 years ago, so things have obviously changed. During this time, our dad was a union rep, and he often came to St. John's where Tam and I lived for union business. Early one morning, we heard a knock at the door. We weren't expecting anyone, so when we peeked to see who it was, the fear of God came over Tam and I to see Dad and one of his friends standing outside the door waiting for us to let them in. Tam ran to wake Steve and tell him to hide because Dad was outside. And Steve, being half asleep and fully fearful, looked around the room and seeing no other option, shimmied under Tam's bed. So we opened the door, and Dad and Chess Cribb, a man from the union, came into the apartment. Tam and I offered them a coffee, and we sat at the table, hoping that they would do the same. No. Dad asked Chess if he wanted to see the apartment while they waited for the coffee. So Tam and I looked at each other with our hearts in our throats as Dad and Chess went into the living room, and then my bedroom, and then finally Tam's room at the end of the hall. When they got to Tam's room, they noticed something about her window and started chatting about the window and not leaving the room. So Tam and I stood staring at each other, hoping that Steve's feet and all the rest of his body were still under the bed. Let me tell you, that was the quickest cup of coffee we ever served to anyone in that apartment, and the hastiest goodbye to a visit. And I was going to say, as far as I know, Dad doesn't know that Steve was in the apartment, let alone under the bed that day. But they're watching on FaceTime. Now they know. Steve was motivated to find work after he left high school, and he tried his hand at a few things before moving out west. He spent some time traveling the island, delivering and repairing large video game units for arcades. He went to trade school and completed a program in fisheries. He worked as a roofer for a while, and then he came here to find work and build a life for Tammy and Tiana and himself. In 1994, Tammy and Tiana moved to Alberta to join Steve. Their first home was a small basement apartment over in the Eastbrook area. As other people from our part of the island and other parts of Newfoundland moved to Brooks, that little apartment building became a community of Newfoundlanders. On one of my first visits to Brooks, I saw how hard Steve worked on the rigs. He'd come home late each evening, covered in dust and oil, and obviously really tired from a hard day of work. Nonetheless, you could hear him before you saw him, whistling or chatting with someone he met in the hallway or on the stairs. He'd always arrive home and quickly change before coming into the apartment because Tam wouldn't let him move very far with his work clothes on. And he'd ask how everyone's day was and what we did during the day. That was Steve, always interested in others and always putting others first. And as far as I know, for the whole 26 years that Steve worked the rigs, he never wore his work clothes into the house. One evening on that trip to Brooks, Tam and I were sitting at the table, probably having a cup of tea, chatting away. Steve had been playing with Tiana and talking to her about Jessie, who was Tiana's imaginary friend at the time. And when I looked over, Steve had fallen asleep, probably exhausted from a hard day of work out in the hot sun. And he was moving his arms and his hands like he was trying to dig a pole for a fence poster using an auger or something. And I looked over and said, Tammy, what's Steve doing? She said, oh, don't mind him, Teen. He's spinning rods. He does that during the day on the days. Now he does it at home in his sleep. As they settled into their new life in Alberta, Tam and Steve brought their first home together. And then they completed their family in 1998 with the addition of Tom. Steve was so proud of his little man, and even prouder that Tom, like Diana, looked just like him. I had to say, if you saw or spoke to Steve after Tom was born, you would think he was 10 feet tall and bulletproof. He was so happy to have his boy and so happy to have their little family completed. Steve was a fun dad, spending his time when he wasn't working, playing with Diana and Tom, watching cartoons, many Disney movies, taking them on family outings like fires and barbecues out at the lake, and days on the rides at Callaway Park. He was involved in all their school projects. Sometimes I think he was more invested in getting good grades on them than Tom and Diana ever were. This was part of who Steve was. If he took something on, he did so with gusto, and he put everything he had into making it the best that it could be. Family was a huge priority for Steve. He role modeled values that were important to him, to Tommy and Diana on a daily basis. They understood that it was important to be a close family, to help others out whenever you could, and to work hard and do your best at anything that you took on. It was important to Steve that both of his kids pursue a post-secondary education after high school. He supported their dreams and let them decide what they wanted to pursue. Steve traveled to Calgary every Friday after work to get Diana from SAIT and then brought her back every Sunday. It didn't matter if he worked 10 or 12 hours those days. It was important to him if Diana wanted to be home, he'd make sure it happened. Steve was diagnosed on August 30th, 2019, just before Tom was set to start college. Despite having had his first chemo treatments and a bone biopsy, he was adamant that he and Tam moved Tom into residence in Lethbridge on September 3rd. This was Steve putting the needs of his kids first and role modeling the importance not only of education, but also perseverance and how hard you'll work to let family know how much they need. Steve's adventurous and free-spirited nature is evident in many of the stories that he shared with others. And I'm going to wager that almost everyone in this room has heard a story from Steve that started sounding pretty typical. People could identify with it, but then they ended with a car in a ditch, a car down a steep hill, or even in a body of water at the time it was described to you, which happened more than once. He had a way of finding himself in a pickle, but he always fared okay and always walked away with yet another great story to tell. About 10 or 12 years ago, Steve wanted to buy a snowmobile. So knowing his tendency to be a daredevil and take risks, Tam was a little hesitant to this idea. However, after many promises to her that he just wanted her to trail ride and take it easy, Tam gave in, and Steve went out, fitted himself out with a snowmobile, a trailer, and all the gear he needed. It was when he told her he also got an avalanche kit that Tam started to question his motivation to stick it to the trails and take it easy. On one of his trips, Tam became worried because she hadn't heard from him. So after waiting a long time, he finally called. Tam quickly asked why he hadn't called earlier. He said he hadn't had a chance because he ran into a little hiccup. Now, Tam immediately recognized this as Steve's attempt to minimize something more than a hiccup and asked, "Are you okay?" He said, "Oh, yes, I'm fine." Well, she had a little damage, baby, that's all. Come to find out, his $20,000 snowmobile had about $15,000 damage after he rolled it while trying to high mark on the side of the mountain. Thankfully, he was fine. He came away with a huge repair bill and yet another great story to tell. Steve was the type of person that laughed and smiled easily. He was a welcoming and friendly person, qualities that endured in his character throughout his life, and indeed even during his battle with cancer. I remember the day we all gathered in Calgary for his second chemo treatment at Top Level. Soon after, the doctor came in and gave Steve a description of what the treatment would be. He asked if we had any questions. Steve looked at him and said, "Does it contain cod liver oil?" The doctor looked at Steve, and Steve smiled, and he said, "Are you from Newfoundland?" Steve said, "I am." That was it. Instant connection. Steve began asking him questions and telling him about our part of the island. That was how Steve approached all encounters with people. He was friendly, he was funny, and he always had something to say. It is funny because once the treatment was finished, the doctor asked, "Do you have any questions?" Steve said, "I have one." The doctor nodded, and Steve asked with a wink, "What about the birds and the bees, Mom? I missed stuff." The doctor laughed and patted him on the shoulder and told him not to worry, the birds and the bees would be fine. Now there's a little more to this story that Tam and Steve shared with the family after we returned from Calgary that involves a trip to Shoppers Drug Mart, up to 2 of them made, and some of the items that they purchased and the clerk's response to those items. I'm not going to share that part of the story, but Tam might if you ask her in private later. Steve and Tammy shared a special love with one another. It was a love that you could see and feel if you were in their presence. Steve was an attentive and adoring husband. It was a rare occasion that he actually referred to Tam by her name. Usually you heard sweetheart when he was speaking to her or he was speaking with her. In the final days at the hospital when Steve was awake, he wasn't speaking much. On his last day, we were all gathered in his room. Tam had left the room for a minute to go and speak with the nursing staff, and when she came back, she walked past the foot of Steve's bed. He looked at her like he'd seen her for the first time and asked with a smile, "Where have you been all my life?" Tam smiled back at him and told him she'd been here with him all along, and he smiled back at her again. To my knowledge, that was the last exchange between them, and I believe the last words that Steve spoke before he passed. So even in those final hours, their love story continued. He wanted her to know he noticed her, he needed her, and he loved her. Steve and Tammy's love story began a long time ago and strengthened with each year that they spent together. They would have celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary on June 30th, so just 2 weeks or so from now. And Steve was the best gift giver ever, and knowing how much Tam loves jewelry, he had bought her gift already for their 30th wedding anniversary while he was still well. When I hear the term soulmates, Steve and Tammy's love story comes to mind, and how they lived their lives as one. They loved spending time with other people, but they truly only needed each other. When you think of his many wonderful qualities as a brother, a friend, a father, and a husband, in so many ways, Steve truly was one of a kind, and he was one of the best. Thank you so much for hearing my stories, for sharing the smiles, and for sharing the tears. Now I'll call Chloe, Claudia, and Kevin to the front to share their musical talents with you. We hope you'll enjoy hearing them sing and play as much as Steve did, and the rest of our family does when we get to hear them. Thank you.
choices since the day that I was born. There were voices that told me right from wrong. If I had listened, no, I wouldn't be here today, living and dying with the choices I've made. I was tempted by an early age. I found I liked to drink. Oh, and I never turned it down. There were loved ones, but I turned them all away. Now I'm loving and dying with the choices I've made. I've had choices since the day that I was born. There were voices that told me right from wrong. If I had listened, no, I wouldn't be here today, living and dying with the choices I made. For the things that I have done, if I could go back. Oh, Lord knows I've run, but I'm still losing this game of life I play, losing and dying with the choices I've made. I've had choices since the day that I was born. There were voices that told me right from wrong. If I had listened, I wouldn't be here today, living and dying with the choices I've made. Choices I made.
Keep going.
idea? And put a springboard on her butt. Yeah, put a springboard on front of her.
Well, I'm running down the road trying to loosen my load. I got 7 women on my mind. 4 that wanna own me, 2 that wanna stone me, 1 says she's a friend of mine. Take it easy, take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy. Lighten up while you still can. Don't even try to understand. Just find a place to make your stand. Take it easy. Well, I'm standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. It's such a fine sight to see. It's a girl, my lord, in a flatbed Ford, slowing down to take a look at me. Come on, baby, don't say baby. I gotta know if your sweet love is gonna save me. We may lose and we may win, but we will never be here again. So open up, I'm climbing in. So take it easy. Running down the road, trying to loosen my load. Got a world of trouble on my mind. Looking for a lover who won't blow my cover. She's so hard to find. Take it easy, take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels make you crazy. Come on, baby, don't say baby.
That's too big. That's not play for us at all.
Just hit the light switch. I think everyone will agree that that was beautiful. Thank you so much, Tanya. And everyone that contributed the photos and the videos to the slideshow. So now I'm going to read a message from Steve's baby sister, Maxie. And I'm going to do my best. Max is a fabulous storyteller. So anyone that knows Max, channel her as I'm reading this, a picture of her explaining the story. She says, "Dear Tammy, Diana, and Tommy, I'm so sorry I couldn't make it to the celebration of life of my wonderful brother. My heart and soul are with you today. I'm sure you've all heard many stories about Steve today. There are so many of them, like when he was a little boy, he stripped a mannequin at the mall in Marystown, and poor Dad was mortified trying to get her dressed again. Mom told me a story that happened when we were really young. She had an appointment and come by chance, and me and Steve stayed in the parking lot. And of course, Steve, being so mischievous, started throwing rocks at the crows. And I guess because I was the smallest of the two of us, the crows attacked me and almost had my eyes picked out until a man in the hospital ran out and rescued me. Bub had a lot of close calls growing up. He was sliding in a cardboard box down a road, and a car topped over the hill and couldn't stop on the ice. The car had him trapped in the box and dragged him all the way to the bottom of the hill. Another time, he was on my bike, going down the same hill, and a transport truck lost its brakes and ran over the tire on the bike, and a man pulled Bob over the fence just as the bike hit the truck. He was also riding a bike in Terranceville when a van hit him. One of his sneakers was found on the opposite side of the road, and he didn't get hurt either of these times. I can go on and on with so many stories. He was known for going all around all summer long in his bare feet. I have so many fond memories of my Bob. I remember him holding my hand coming down from school and helping me down the hill to our home. Both of us would put on our dad's wool socks with his boots and run outside to get snow so we could make ice cream with carnation milk and vanilla. We'd jump off the roof of Mom's office into snowbanks and then climb on the walls in the hallway. We played for hours. He wasn't only my brother, but also my best friend. My handsome brother will live on in our memories. My life will never be the same. I'll miss that beautiful smile, his hearty laugh, and his wonderful personality. He truly was a great brother, and he will be forever in our thoughts. My handsome brother, may he rest easy with our family and never take him again. I will love him always. Your baby sister, Maggie. We'll all remember Steve for his optimistic and generous spirit. He had an extraordinary ability to make everyone feel cherished, with a genuine interest and the enthusiasm he expressed during his interactions with everyone. And as we continue to navigate life without Steve, we're all forever grateful for the great privilege of having had him in our lives. his legacy of love, kindness, and connection with you. And as we continue to come to terms with the loss of such an important member of our family, we've talked about how we could honor Steve and the legacy that he's left behind. What can we do to ensure that his memory lives on and the impact that he made on so many could be honored? When we think of Steve, we think of that smile, a hearty laugh, and an effort to connect with others, to share a little bit of ourselves with those we meet, and to make an effort to make a positive impact. We've committed to taking the extra time to connect with others, to smile, to say hello, and just ask how someone's day is doing, to ensure that those we interact with feel heard and seen, and know that there are kind and generous people in their midst, as Steve did throughout his whole life. We encourage you all to do the same, so that we can all do our part, as Steve did, to make moments memorable because we took the time to be kind and were generous with our time and attention. Tammy, Diana, and Tommy, along with the entire extended family, want to thank each of you for joining us here today to celebrate Steve's life. We recognize that people have traveled far, people have rearranged travel plans, people have taken time off work to be here to honor Steve, and we're so grateful that each and every one of you could have been here today. The messages, the support, and the kindness of so many has been a blessing during this really difficult time. It's actually been amazing to experience the love and connection from so many people. And we're so thankful to each of you for being here to join us to celebrate Steve today. We'll end the formal portion of the celebration now with 2 songs from Kevin, while the caterer puts the final touches on our meal. So I'll ask Kevin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kevin. I'm Steve's brother-in-law. And as you've probably seen on the videos there, every time we all got together, I'd pull out my guitar and we'd sing a few songs. So if you know the words, feel free to sing along. I'll do a couple songs and we'll get to the supper. I've had choices since the day I was born. There are voices told right from wrong. If I had listened, wouldn't be here today, living and dying.
Okay, now sister will come up and she will say grace, and she'll also follow the order of the tables for the buffet line.
Bless us, O Lord, for these thy gifts, which we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen. We'll start with table 1, 3, 5, and then 6.
If you want a beer, my button's there, look. That's mine there.
Okay, alright, I gotta bring mine in.
Been here for 20 years. You worked for me. I was my